Hey, it's Rod Bergeron here with you again, and we're doing painting for absolute beginners. And today we're going to look at some acrylic paint. You ever wondered about acrylic paint? You ever thought, how do I use acrylic paint? Well, I'm going to help you out with some of that today. So grab a coffee, grab some candy, whatever you got to do, and let's have a look at some acrylic paint today. Anyways, acrylic paint is super versatile, really easy to use, super easy to clean up from. And this is one of the reasons why I like it. All right, so I got a bunch of different acrylic paint out here. I got some stuff by Liquitex, and you know, I would say most of the Liquitex stuff is, if not, I would say all of the Liquitex stuff is really good. They don't really make any junk. So even this stuff here that's fairly inexpensive, this basic stuff, is pretty good to use. All right. This stuff I think I get for about, depending upon the color, these are all 118 milliliter tubes right there. So 4 US fluid ounces. These are around 10 bucks each. But they'll last you for a significant amount of time, depending upon how thick it is that you put the color on the page, obviously. But are really versatile, last quite a long time. These ones here are slightly more expensive. This is Turner, and these are really good, very nice acrylic paint also. All right. There's lots of other companies, a variety of other companies that make acrylic paint. And you know, you get what you pay for. So the more expensive ones that you buy are going to be better. This is my palette for working in acrylic paint, and you'll see it's kind of mucky. If you leave acrylic paint sit for very long, it will harden up, and essentially it'll ruin brushes if you leave it to harden up for too long. Acrylic paint is, you have to think of it as plastic. All right, so think of this as a liquid plastic that you're painting onto a page. So if you leave it for too long, it hardens up really hard. All right, so the next thing I want to look at is brushes. So for acrylic painting, you essentially can use all of the brushes that you use for your watercolor painting. You can use in acrylic paint. You don't need to have separate individual brushes. So all these regular brushes, of course, this is a flat brush. This is a bigger flat brush nonetheless, and also flat brush. All right, flat brushes come in a variety of sizes. This one here you'll find is fairly expensive. This is probably at least a $60 or $70 or $80 brush, and these here are significantly less than this. But brushes will last you a long time if you take care of them. All right, so acrylic paint, you can use exactly the same paint brushes that you use for watercolor. All right, so if you want to get really detailed, of course you can use a small round brush, or if you want to lay down a whole lot of paint in one time, you can use a larger flat brush. All right, no need to go out and get a whole bunch of different paint brushes. These are paint brushes that I have had for a long time, and you'll see they're well used. All right. Okay, so set all that over here. So that's the paint, and the brushes are the same. So of course you're just going to use regular water, just like you do in watercolor painting, and you can use just watercolor paper. Just regular watercolor paper will take acrylic paint. All right, so there's no need to go and buy any other kind of paper. You can use board, you can use canvas, all of those types of things. Acrylic paint is really a good stand-in for oil paint. I personally don't paint with oil paint anymore. I find it very toxic. I find all the things to clean up with are very toxic, and acrylic paint will do everything that oil paint will do in just very, you know, a whole lot less money and a whole lot less fumes and a whole lot less cleanup process. All right, so acrylic paint. So I'm going to do just a quick little demonstration on here for you with acrylic paint, and I'm just going to make up a little fake sort of landscape, something that I kind of have in my head that I want to do, but I haven't yet. So very often when you open up your acrylic paint, you're going to have this little dried up little nobule of acrylic paint in there. Just pull that off, chuck it in the garbage, and you'll see acrylic paint, well, it just squeezes out really super easily. And this is some white. We're going to add a little bit of white to this. All right, if I can get some out of here. Might have to get out a new white. That might be enough to demonstrate with. Chuck that one in the garbage. And I'm going to mix this up with just a regular 1/2 inch flat brush. Get it a little bit wet. Get your brush a little bit wet. And you'll see I'm going to mix this white into that water. And that's how we thin down acrylic paint, is just with water. So you can just put your brush into the water, and if you want it thinner, you pick up more water, just like that. I'm going to put a little touch of this blue paint into this. This is going to be my sky. All right, I'm going to put this onto the page. And you'll see the color is much more vibrant than anything that you would get with watercolor. It's very easy and quick to lay down. And if you wanted to thin that out, or if you wanted to spread that out a little bit, you just add more water to it and you can get that thinned out. I'm going to try to go for kind of a streaky kind of a sky in this particular painting. And I'm going to paint it down quite a ways here. I'm going to leave my edges sort of jagged like that. It's sort of what it is that I'm going for. All right, so you can thin it out really easily. Goes onto the page much the same way that you would with any other, really any other watercolor. It will just thin out and go on. But you see the color is much more vibrant, and it has a much thicker, I'll turn it maybe this way a little bit. You see it's already drying out. So it will move around. If you get it wet enough, it will move around just like you would with watercolor paint. But for right now, this is just fairly thick. This was obviously a wet on dry technique. The page was dry. All right. So we're going to move on here a little bit, and I'm thinking about sort of a yellowy kind of a wheat field in the background here. So I'm going to take some yellow. And I'm not really going to clean this brush off. I'm going to take this brush with the light blue, sort of pale blue on it. I'm going to leave this on this brush, and I'm going to just put this into the water, pick up some water, and pick up a little bit of yellow paint here. And you'll see it's going to have a little bit of a green tinge to it, which is sort of what it is that I'm going for here. I'm going to paint this in. I'm painting most of this. You'll see I'm using this 1/2 inch brush. Right, get that covered up a little bit there, and we're going to make these wheat fields curve down here a little bit like this. And don't worry about this where the yellow hasn't covered up the blue, because I'm going to come back in here in a minute. You know, if you're following along here, you'll see I'm using this paint pretty much right out of the tube, fairly thickly, and you'll see that there's a good layer of paint. Hope that's picking up on the camera, but you'll see there's a fairly thick layer of paint on the page now. All right, so this is again right out of the tube, and I'm not mixing this a whole lot. I'm letting it sort of mix on the page, so I'm letting that green sort of get picked up in there. I'm going to take some of this green now, or some of this yellow now with this blue, and I'm going to mix up a little bit for a tree line back here that's going to cover up some of this. So I'm going to take some blue, and I'm going to take some water, and I'm going to mix this into this yellow, and hopefully we're going to get a green here, a lighter green. There we go. Sort of the green I'm looking for, maybe a little bit lighter than that. But I'm not going to mix it up too much. I'm going to pick up some of this on the brush and have it a little bit unmixed. So you see I'm covering up where that was with the where the yellow had met the sky and hadn't quite filled that in. I'm just going to use some fairly aggressive strokes in there. I'm not going to muck around with that too much. I'm going to pick up a little bit of darker blue, unmixed again, and put it in here as some sort of a, the low light of the low lights of the tree line. And down here, I'm going to put in a little bit of blue that's not heavily mixed. I should say green that's not heavily mixed. And we'll put this in here as sort of our tree line down here across the bottom. Again, a little bit of darker blue in this. And just sort of, you'll see I'm touching the brush onto the page fairly quickly, fairly aggressively. I'm just trying to make some marks that are going to, look like trees maybe. And I'm leaving not mixing it a whole lot. I'm trying to put it on here fairly, I guess aggressively is the word that I'm trying to use here. I'm going to mix this in with some of this lighter blue. Put some of that in here too. And mix this in a little bit. A little bit of this lighter blue up in here. Okay. That's sort of what it is that I'm going for. All right, so that's basically acrylic paint in a nutshell. This is absolute beginner, so I'm really just trying to show you some, really quick, easy techniques and let you play with it. I'd really like to hear from you and see if you have, any questions or comments for me about acrylic paint. Obviously, later on in other video series, I'll do a whole series on acrylic paint, and we'll experiment more with it. It's a really nice thing to use as a multimedia piece. You can put a lot of stuff underneath it, and then acrylic paint will cover up everything super easily. So if you experiment with, if you want to experiment with some multimedia stuff, maybe this might be the paint for you to give it a try with. All right. Okay, so I'd love to hear from you. So if you got a question or a comment, please leave it in the comment section. I'm going to finish this up and then I'll post the final version of it, but I think I'm pretty much done here. Certainly, if you like this video, please click like. If you're not currently a subscriber, please subscribe to my channel. And as always, I'd love to hear from you. So if you have a question or a comment, please leave it for me. This has been Bergeron. We're doing painting for absolute beginners. This has been acrylic painting. See you again next time. Thanks for checking me out.